In 1982, 29-year-old Stephen Callahan set out to cross the Atlantic Ocean alone, but just 3 days later, his 21-foot sailboat began taking on water in the middle of the vast ocean. What awaited him was nothing but endless blue, merciless sun and a 76-day fight for survival. How can a single man survive alone in the open sea? Let's dive into this incredible story together. On the morning of January 29, 1982, in the southeastern Atlantic Ocean off the coast of the Canary Islands, as the first rays of sunlight shimmered on the sea's surface, 29-year-old Stephen Callahan quietly set sail on his 6.5-meter-long sailboat, Napoleon Solo. His goal was ambitious: to cross the Atlantic Ocean alone.
For this young man, who had devoted years to sailing, engineering, and the sport of yachting, this journey was not just a geographical goal, but a deep inner journey where he would be alone with nature and confront his own soul. Stephen began this tough challenge with great care. He had designed his boat with his own hands using detailed engineering knowledge, considering every aspect meticulously. The vessel was equipped with state-of-the-art navigation systems, storm sails, spare oars, and emergency supplies, designed to withstand the harshest conditions. However, despite all this extensive preparation, the bitter truth remained. Nature is always stronger than any preparation. And sometimes, all that careful planning ends up being just the fragile foundation of a survival process. On the night of February 1st, Stephen's meticulously planned voyage turned into a nightmare with a sudden and violent blow.
In the darkest hours of the night, the hull of the sailboat shook with a loud crash. When he awoke, he faced a terrifying reality. The hull was rapidly taking on water. Most likely, it had collided with a giant fish or floating debris lost in the vast ocean. Within minutes, the Napoleon Solo became unsalvageable. Stephen Callahan quickly made a decision and inflated a 6-person life raft. The only things he could take with him were a small amount of food, drinking water, fishing gear, flares for emergencies, a miniature desalinator, and, of course, a nautical chart, all offering a flicker of hope for survival. With these items, he took shelter in a tiny life raft in the middle of the ocean. From that moment on, time lost all meaning. There was no longer a sense of direction or a safe harbor. All that remained was one man, a fragile raft, and a massive 5,000-kilometer ocean ready to consume him. Thus began the longest 76 days of Stephen Callahan's life. In the heart of the ocean, surrounded by endless blue solitude, far from the sound of any human voice, Callahan was now face to face with nature's power. In the early days, the flame of hope within him still burned. He believed that passing ships might see him, that his flares might be answered, or that planes flying overhead might spot him. However, after one ship, then 3, then 5, eventually 7 ships passed by. None of them saw him. Each passing day diminished his hope a little more, replacing it with deep uncertainty. Living on the life raft required superhuman effort. During the day, the harsh sun of the Atlantic scorched his skin, causing severe burns. At night, temperatures dropped dramatically, and the salty winds created painful wounds on his body. The most basic need, drinking water, became a life-threatening issue. When rain collection wasn't possible, he tried to desalinate seawater using his tiny device. But these devices frequently failed, and in the battle for survival, they marked the thin line between life and death. Each failure deepened his despair. When the food ran out, Stephen had to learn to survive with the limited resources nature offered. During the day, he caught flying fish with his swift hands as they landed near the raft, and hunted dorado, mahi-mahi, with a small spear. He ate the fish raw without hesitation and tried to use their skin to protect himself from the burning sun. This primitive diet upset his stomach and caused his body to rapidly lose weight. Despite being on the brink of physical exhaustion, his will to live never weakened. In fact, it grew stronger. After a while, surprisingly, a particular Dorado began to circle around the raft consistently. Stephen gave it a name and started talking to it as if it were a friend. In the middle of the ocean, this little fish was not just a food source, it was the trembling voice of loneliness. In the heart of nature, even the slightest sign of life meant the revival of nearly lost hope for Stephen. As days passed, fish scales, fish bones, and blood began to accumulate on the floor of the life raft. This scene was a tangible sign of the heavy price Stephen was paying to survive. Unfortunately, these remnants began to attract the ocean's most dangerous predators: sharks. One day, his worst fear came true. Sharks started to attack the raft. Stephen managed to survive until morning by pressing his body against the leaks, constantly trying to bail out the water. Thanks to his engineering knowledge, he repeatedly repaired the torn raft, carefully sealing every hole and every tear. Each rip and every puncture marked the fine, invisible line between life and death. Each moment carrying the potential to cross that line. The concept of time had completely disappeared in this endless and hopeless ocean. Even counting the days had lost its meaning. Time was nothing more than a flow. Each day meant witnessing the sun rise and set, breathing a little less, and becoming more and more exhausted. Yet Stephen Callahan never gave up. Every morning was a new battle for him, another struggle to survive. The will to live inside him was the only force that kept him going. On April 20, 1982, a fishing boat approaching the Caribbean spotted a weak, bearded man with sunken eyes inside a life raft in the middle of the ocean. That man was Stephen Callahan. After exactly 76 days of this incredible survival ordeal, he had drifted 1,800 nautical miles, about 3,300 kilometers, to land. Most of his body was covered in severe sunburns and infections. By the time he was rescued, he had lost 25 kilograms, and yet he was alive, and miraculously, he was smiling. The first question he asked upon being rescued revealed how sharp and focused his mind still was. Is the moon still full? This question showed that he had tracked time using the moon, using the sky as a kind of compass through breaks in the clouds. While his technological navigation systems had failed, his mind had continued to function as a compass, the most important tool that had kept him alive. This experience changed Stephen Callahan not only physically but also mentally and spiritually. After being rescued, he wrote a book titled Adrift, 76 Days Lost at Sea, recounting his experiences. The book sold millions of copies worldwide and became a kind of textbook for many survival experts. Callahan not only shared his own life story, but also taught others how to think in such crisis situations. And perhaps most importantly, he instilled in people a sense of humility toward nature. In an interview years later, he summed up the most important lesson he learned from this ordeal. A boat can sink, technology can fail, but the mind, patience, and respect for nature are the true survival tools. Stephen Callahan's extraordinary story is not only a tale of survival in the middle of the ocean, but also a powerful summary of the inner war humans fight with their own fear, darkness, and loneliness. This striking story, drawn from a real-life struggle, speaks of the delicate balance between the magnitude of nature and the fragility of humanity. If stories of breathtaking survival like this one interest you, don't forget to follow for more episodes in this series. Share your thoughts in the comments